Alright, hey there everybody. Welcome back. Chapter 1146 of One Piece. I don't know if everybody's been catching up, this is spoiler territory. So I want to talk about a theory that is getting very popular in the community right now. And I think that we've all been having the same theory. Either King Harold was an evil guy, or King Harold was being duped by the God's Knights and the world government. And I'm leaning more towards the latter than the former. And my reasoning why all stems from the chapter of 1146. Within the chapter of 1146, we see Gunko basically speed run the Straw Hats. She ran through them like a speed run on a video game, okay? And it's not only her, but we also see Shepard, Summers, and also Graham doing the same exact thing in other parts of the island. Gunko, during her biblical speech, talks about whichever side the Giants is on will be highly favored inside of this final war. Now, the way she speaks of it is as if it was some sort of prophecy that the world government has had. We also see how she fights the Straw Hats in this chapter. So I'm gonna give you a breakdown, right? Here's my headcanon. King Harold had been given an offer by the world government probably to become a world government affiliated nation, something that he probably would have held in high regard, being a more progressive king. But Harold probably found out that the only reason that they were inviting him into the world government was so that the giants would fight on their side during Ragnarok, or the final war. And he also may have found out that the prophecy says that Nika will be the one to destroy the world. And he probably realized that the world government was the real enemy at the time. And maybe he found out that the world government themselves only saw the giants as a means to an end. They did not care for the giants as people and may even enslave the giants after this entire war is done with. So instead, Harold thought to himself, there's no telling when this war may come. However, I can start now and start educating the newer generation of Elbaf so that by the time they become full-fledged giants, if the war does happen, they will be more educated in making their decision of whose side they would want to be on. And if the giants are more peaceful at the time and aren't as powerful in the eyes of the world government anymore, then would the world government even still want them on their side? My guess is that 8 years ago, the God Knights found out about King Harold's school. They found out about King Harold's giants becoming more peaceful and there being less raging giant warriors on the sea. So maybe they went to go confront Harold about it. At the time, Hydruden was not allowed to live in the castle. So Loki would have been the prince in the castle at the time. Another prominent figure from Elbaf who could have possibly been inside of the castle at that time would be Yarul. He is the oldest giant that we know of and highly respected for his rampage on the seas about 300 years ago. So maybe Loki, Jarl, and King Harold were inside of the throne room when a few God's Knights appeared to question Harold about what was going on. And maybe Harold revealed, or maybe they found out, that Harold was gonna renege on the deal. So they decided to kill King Harold. The guards in the castle wouldn't stand for that. Loki and Jarl probably wouldn't stand for that. And so we saw in this chapter how Gunko uses her arrows to make people's attacks either redirect to themselves on some reverse to sender, and how she can make people friendly fire and attack each other while being on the same team. So what if, this is just my headcanon again, what if Gunko was one of the God's Knights at the time to be there to execute King Harold? And this could explain how King Harold's blade ended up in Jarl's head. It could also explain how Loki got framed for King Harold's murder. Maybe Loki came down on her with the full might of the Ragnir, and she used an arrow to redirect this attack and make him attack his own father, killing him in the process. Now, I think that this would be a very, very interesting outcome, because Loki would, yes, be responsible for killing his father, but at the same time, no, would not be responsible for killing his father. There was no malice there. I understand that a part of this that's holding up the theory is the fact that Loki could have accidentally killed his father because of Gunko, and Gunko and the other God's Knights knew King Harold's devil fruit was a legendary fruit, and so the only way to protect that fruit was for Loki to eat it right then and there. But yeah, I can already see that some people are like, well, Loki and Gunko interacted in the underworld of Elbaf, but we don't know if the bandages that he wears are because of his devil fruit, or if he's always worn them. And also, Gunko used a different fighting style while fighting him than she did while fighting the Straw Hats. While fighting the Straw Hats, she redirected a lot of their attacks, sending them either back to them or making them attack each other, or using her arrows to home in on her opponents and, skateboarding basically to them, But with Loki, she mostly used her arrows to add extra power to her punches that she was giving him. And she used the arrows also to make the giant claws and stomp on him. But maybe, especially this being 8 years ago, she learned new techniques within that time frame. This is just how I'm seeing the story shape up. I also believe that it's going to be very important, the fact that Loki and Luffy in this chapter got fat together, because Loki has been shown to be a lot like Luffy. They are very similar. They're both in touch with the animals. They're both rambunctious. They were both rambunctious children. They were both inspired by legendary pirates. Typically, inside of arcs, we'll see some kind of character that Luffy can relate to. In some kind of way, Luffy can relate to them, and they seem to have similar traits and different traits within each other. You know, certain traits that actually are the same and certain traits that are not. Because there's only one Luffy. Of course, they wouldn't have all his traits. However, the one trait we've never seen from any other character is the trait to just eat food ridiculous amounts and almost instantly recover. Luffy, remember, I have always said Luffy is the greatest anime protagonist crash out of 3 generations, and the reason for this is because Luffy does not back down. Luffy has no concept of giving up the fight. I really think that you would have to kill him to end the fight, and we saw how that happened, how that went with Kaido. Luffy has never there has never been another person like Luffy to eat an abundance of food and instantly gain back their vigor and their stamina, their energy, their fighting capacity. And I think that is why Loki got fat with Luffy in this chapter, is because last chapter, 1145, I believe it was 1145, they say that Loki's injuries will take a couple months to heal. Months. We don't have months, you know. And most of the time within arcs, Luffy is the one that people are saying his injuries will take massively long to heal. And yet Luffy will eat a giant feast of a meal and be ready to bounce back and fight his opponent. And I think that is not only because Luffy and Loki have these similar traits, but also because they both are the sun god in some capacity. Luffy, Oda says that he writes Luffy to be able to bounce back. That's why Luffy was made of rubber, and that's why he's always bounced back. In every arc, he always bounces back. But now we know that that rubber fruit is actually the sun god Nika. So what if the fruit that Loki has, being an imitation sun god Nika fruit, possibly, is the reason that Oda is also writing him so similar to Luffy, because they are both in some capacity sun god Nika. Luffy does not know he is sun god Nika, and neither does Loki know that Luffy is sun god Nika, because Loki believes that he is sun god Nika, and now Luffy probably also believes that Loki is sun god Nika. So I'm very interested in what could come next inside of the chapters, and I've never done an actual chapter review. This is only my second video. I don't script these videos. I just like to rant into the microphone, to be honest. I have a problem where I rant my girlfriend's head off about One Piece and other anime that I find very interesting, and so I just thought to myself, maybe I should start a YouTube channel, and that's what I'm doing. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll check you guys out in the next one. Peace.
Like infinity, Mongola infinity. I'm the ultimate entity, immortal entity, and fuck all my enemies. Yo, they feel my energy, that is infinity. Mongola infinity. I'm the ultimate entity, immortal entity, and fuck all my enemies. They feel my energy.